The cage stood in the middle of Main Street, like a monument to broken men. Anna Fletcher pressed her gloved hand against the stage window, watching the iron bars grow larger as the coach rattled closer. October wind scraped across the Wyoming high country, carrying the smell of pine smoke and coming snow. The scent reminded her of winter mornings in Philadelphia, before her mother died, before everything fell apart. Through the dust-filmed glass she could see the gallows rising behind the cage, fresh timber pale as bone against the darkening sky. 3 days until Friday dawn. That was what the poster nailed to the stage depot had said. 3 days until they hanged the man in the cage. She had come west to marry a stranger. She had not expected to find him in chains. The stage lurched to a stop outside the Redemption Hotel, and Anna gathered her carpetbag and the small trunk that held everything she owned that mattered. 2 dresses, 1 good, her mother's cameo, a book of poetry with her father's handwriting in the margins from before the gambling took him. The driver, a leathery man named Cobb, helped her down without meeting her eyes. Nobody in this town seemed willing to look at her directly, as if eye contact might implicate them in whatever darkness had settled over Redemption Ridge. "You, the mail-order bride," a woman's voice sharp as a nail file. Anna turned. The speaker stood in the hotel doorway, arms crossed, face set in the hard lines of someone who had stopped expecting good news decades ago. Her dress was respectable but worn the fabric thin at the elbows. Her hair was pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her features into a permanent expression of suspicion. "I am Anna Fletcher." She kept her voice level the way her mother had taught her before the consumption took her, before father's gambling debts had taken everything else. "I am here to meet Mr. Wallace Pritchard." The woman's expression shifted, something almost like pity flickering across her face before she locked it down again. "I'm Mrs. Crenshaw. I run the hotel. You better come inside." The lobby smelled of lye soap and old coffee underlaid with something earthier. Tobacco smoke, perhaps, or the lingering scent of 100 transient lives passing through. Mrs. Crenshaw led Anna to a table by the window, where the cage was visible across the street. In the fading light, Anna could make out a figure inside sitting motionless on the bare ground. Even from here she could see the perfect stillness of him, the kind of stillness that came from absolute despair or absolute acceptance. "Wallace Pritchard left town 5 days ago," Mrs. Crenshaw said flatly. "Took the morning stage to Cheyenne. Probably in Denver by now if he kept running." The words hit Anna like a slap, cold and precise. She had spent her last $47 on the train from Philadelphia to Cheyenne, then another $12 on the stage north. She had burned her father's "I Owe Us" in the kitchen fireplace before dawn, watching the signatures of cruel men curl into ash. She had left her aunt's house with nothing but a forwarding address, and a promise from a man she had never met, a man whose letters had spoken of fresh starts and clean slates and a life without the weight of other people's mistakes. "I see." Anna's hands found each other in her lap, fingers lacing tight to stop the trembling. "Did he leave any message, any explanation?" "Not that he shared with me." Mrs. Crenshaw's voice softened slightly, the hard edges smoothing just enough to reveal something almost like sympathy beneath. "But I can tell you what I know. Wallace worked for Silas Hanford, who owns most of this town. The mine, the bank, half the businesses. 2 weeks ago, Tom Garrett, one of Silas's mine foremen, went missing in the high country. They found him 4 days later, mauled by a bear. Found that man." She jerked her chin toward the cage, kneeling beside the body with blood on his hands and his knife drawn. Anna's gaze drifted to the window. The man in the cage had not moved. She wondered if he slept sitting up, or if sleep was even possible when you knew the exact hour of your death. "They think he killed Mr. Garrett. They know he did. The blood evidence was clear. Tom's son Benjamin found them together. The boy saw everything." Mrs. Crenshaw leaned forward, her voice dropping. "That man is Nathaniel Cord. People call him the Mountain Man. trapper former Army scout keeps to himself, up in the high timber. Hasn't spoken a word in 6 years, not since whatever happened at Fort Kinney broke something inside him. They say 23 men died there. He was the only one who walked out. When they brought him in for Tom's murder, he didn't fight, didn't resist. Just let them cage him like an animal. And the trial? Judge Wade arrived Monday, heard the evidence Tuesday. Guilty verdict by Tuesday evening. Execution set for Friday dawn. Mrs. Crenshaw's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were reciting a recipe for bread or instructions for washing linens. Wallace left Wednesday morning. I figure he couldn't stomach watching it. He and Nathaniel knew each other years back, before the silence. Anna stared at the cage, her mind working through the implications like her father's old accountant working through ledgers. A mail-order bride with no money, no return ticket, and no husband waiting. A condemned man with 3 days to live. A town that seemed too quiet, too watchful, as if everyone were holding their breath and waiting for something terrible to finish happening. Mrs. Crenshaw, may I ask you something? If Mr. Cord is truly guilty, why do you seem uncertain? The older woman's jaw tightened, the muscles working beneath her weathered skin. I didn't say I was uncertain. You didn't have to. Anna met her eyes. You said Wallace couldn't stomach watching. Not that he couldn't stomach a murderer's execution. There's a difference. For a long moment, Mrs. Crenshaw said nothing. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily, marking off seconds that felt suddenly precious. Then she stood, smoothing her apron with hands that had seen decades of hard work. Room's $3 a week, meals included. You'll be in number 7, top of the stairs. I'll have my boy bring up your trunk. She paused at the door, her back to Anna. Word of advice, Miss Fletcher. In Redemption Ridge, the smart thing is to keep your head down and your questions to yourself, especially when Silas Hanford is involved. Anna stood at the window of room 7, watching the lamplighter make his rounds. The cage cast long shadows across Main Street, and inside those shadows, Nathaniel Cord sat perfectly still. She had been watching for 20 minutes, and he had not moved once. Not to shift position, not to adjust his coat against the cold that was seeping down from the mountains. Nothing. He simply sat, hands loose in his lap, face turned toward the high country. A man waiting to die. The room behind her was sparse but clean. A narrow bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand with a chipped basin, a single chair by the window where Anna sat, now her reflection ghostly in the darkening glass. She could see both the cage and herself superimposed. A strange double image, freedom and captivity, watching and waiting. Anna pulled her shawl tighter and descended the stairs. Mrs. Crenshaw was in the kitchen, the sound of pots clanging, carrying through the thin walls. The lobby was empty. Anna stepped into the October evening, and the cold hit her immediately, sharp and clean, and carrying the promise of winter. She crossed the rutted street, her boots crunching on the frozen mud, and approached the cage. Up close, it was worse. The bars were thick as a man's wrist, set in a frame of railroad iron, bolted to a wooden platform. There was no shelter from the wind, no blanket, no privacy. A bucket in one corner for necessities. A tin cup and a plate with the remains of what might have been beans congealed now in the cold. The message was clear: you are nothing now but an animal waiting for slaughter. Nathaniel Cord looked up. Anna's breath caught in her throat, visible in the cold air between them. She had expected brutality, perhaps, or the vacant stare of a broken mind. What she saw instead was a face carved by weather and sorrow into something almost beautiful. High cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with several days of beard, dark hair hanging past his collar. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark blue, almost gray, and utterly clear. The eyes of a man who had looked at his death and accepted it, who had made his peace with the gallows and the rope and the long drop into darkness. He did not speak, did not move, simply watched her with those calm, terrible eyes. Mr. Cord, my name is Anna Fletcher. She kept her voice low, aware of curtains twitching in nearby windows, aware that every word she spoke would be reported to someone before the night was through. I came west to marry Wallace Pritchard. He left before I arrived. I find myself in need of information, and you, I suspect, are in need of an advocate. I propose a trade. Still no response, not even a flicker of interest. Just that steady assessing gaze as if he were measuring her and finding her wanting, or perhaps finding her foolish. She could not tell which. Anna crouched down, bringing herself level with his seated position. The ground was cold through her skirts, cold enough that she could feel it seeping into her bones. This close, she could smell him. Unwashed skin, yes, but also pine and wood smoke and something wilder like the scent of the mountains themselves. I know you do not speak. Mrs. Crenshaw told me about Fort Kinney. But I also know that silence is not the same as inability. If you can hear me, and if you understand what I am offering, I need you to give me a sign. For 5 heartbeats, nothing. The wind rattled the bars, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked. Then Nathaniel Cord reached out with movements so deliberate they seemed weighted, and picked up a small stone from the dirt beside him. Slowly, carefully, he drew a single line in the dust. Yes, Anna felt something loosen in her chest, some tight knot of fear she had been carrying since Philadelphia. Good. They say you killed Tom Garrett. They say his son witnessed it. But Wallace fled and Mrs. Crenshaw doubts, and this town feels wrong in ways I cannot yet name. I have no money, no prospects, and nowhere to go. You have 3 days and a noose waiting. She leaned closer to the bars, close enough to see the individual scars on his hands, the calluses that spoke of a life lived outdoors. I have an education and a talent for seeing patterns that others miss. What I do not have is legal standing to ask questions or demand answers on your behalf. She paused, letting the words settle between them. But a wife has standing. A wife can demand to see evidence. A wife can hire lawyers, can petition the judge, can make noise that cannot easily be silenced. So here is what I propose, Mr. Cord. You marry me, right now tonight before witnesses. In exchange, I will spend the next 3 days trying to find the truth of what happened to Tom Garrett. If I succeed, you live. If I fail... She met his eyes. If I fail, at least you will die knowing someone tried. Nathaniel stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached down and wrote in the dirt letters formed with careful precision, Why would I do this? Anna considered the question, considered all the true answers she could give. Because I am desperate? Because I am alone? Because I have nowhere else to turn? But what came out was something deeper, something she had not quite articulated even to herself until this moment. Because I have spent my entire life being told what I cannot do, what I cannot be, what I must accept. My mother died when I was 16. My father gambled away everything we had and then drank himself into a grave. I lived with my aunt for 7 years, watching her husband look at me the way men do when they think no one is watching, feeling his eyes on me at dinner, in the hallway, everywhere. She swallowed hard, tasting something bitter. I answered an advertisement for a mail-order bride because it was the only door that was not locked. And now I am here in a town that feels like a trap, watching them prepare to execute a man who may not be guilty. So why? She met his eyes. Because I am tired of watching wrong things happen and doing nothing. Because I am tired of being powerless. Because for once in my life, I want to choose my own path even if it leads nowhere good. Nathaniel held her gaze. Then he smoothed the dirt and wrote again, Dangerous. I know. Anna's voice was steady. I am counting on it. Another long pause. Then, with movements that seemed to cost him something, Nathaniel Cord reached through the bars and extended his right hand. It was scarred, calloused, the hand of a man who had lived hard and survived. The hand of a man who knew what it meant to kill, whether in mercy or in violence. Anna took it. His skin was cold from the mountain air, but beneath that cold she felt warmth. His grip was firm, neither crushing nor tentative. A promise or perhaps a warning. She felt the ridges of old scars against her palm, felt the strength in those fingers, and she thought, "This is a man who has survived things that would have broken me. This is a man who knows how to endure." "I will need a judge and a witness," Anna said. "Can it be done?" Nathaniel released her hand and wrote, "Reverend Stone Ezra, the Reverend can perform the ceremony. Yes, and Ezra, deputy, good man." Anna stood brushing dust from her skirts. Her hand still tingled where his skin had touched hers. "Then we have a wedding to arrange. I will return within the hour." As she turned to go, Nathaniel made a soft sound, not quite a word, but something close. She looked back. He was writing again, his movements slower now, as if the act cost him something. Anna. "Thank you." It was the first time he had used her name. The first time she suspected that he had thanked anyone for anything in 6 years. She nodded once, not trusting her voice, then walked back across the street, feeling the weight of his gaze between her shoulder blades and the weight of what she had just promised settling onto her shoulders like a mantle of lead. The Reverend Caleb Stone was not what Anna had expected. He answered the door of the small church on the edge of town, in shirt sleeves, a book in one hand, and reading spectacles perched on his nose. He was in his early 40s, lean and weathered, with hands that seemed too rough for a man of the cloth. They were the hands of someone who had done hard labor, or perhaps harder things. Anna noticed the scars across his knuckles, the kind you got from fighting. "Miss Fletcher." He studied her with sharp hazel eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. "I heard you arrived this evening. My condolences regarding Mr. Pritchard's departure." "Thank you, Reverend. I have come to request a service." "I see." He stepped aside, gesturing her into the small spare sanctuary. Candles burned on the altar, and the air smelled of beeswax and old wood and the faint, sweet scent of incense. "What manner of service?" "A wedding. Tonight, if possible. Between myself and Nathaniel Cord." Caleb Stone went very still. He set his book down carefully on a pew, removed his spectacles with deliberate movements, and turned to face her fully. "Miss Fletcher, I must ask you to consider what you are saying. Nathaniel Cord will be executed in 3 days. You would be a widow before the week is out." "I am aware of the timeline, Reverend." "Are you also aware that marrying a condemned murderer will mark you in this town? There are those who would see it as an affront and insult to Tom Garrett's memory and his grieving family." "I am aware of that as well." Anna kept her voice calm, though her heart was racing. "But I am also aware that you called him Nathaniel, not the mountain man or the killer. And you said condemned murderer, not simply murderer, which suggests you, like Mrs. Crenshaw, have doubts." The Reverend's expression shifted, something guarded entering his eyes. He moved to the window, looking out, toward where the cage stood dark against the lighter sky. "I was a different man before I found the church, Miss Fletcher. I have seen violence, have dealt it out myself. I know what a killer's eyes look like. I have looked into the eyes of men who killed for pleasure, for profit, for rage, and when I look at Nathaniel Cord—" He trailed off. "You see something else," Anna finished. "I see a man carrying a burden too heavy for words." Caleb turned back to her. "I knew Nathaniel before Fort Kinney. He was a scout, one of the best. Could track anything, survive anywhere. But more than that, he was decent. Helped a widow fix her roof, once spent 3 weeks on it, refused payment, found a lost child in a blizzard, carried her 10 miles through snow that would have killed most men, gave her his coat, nearly froze to death himself." The Reverend's voice grew quieter. "That is the Nathaniel I knew. The man who came back from Fort Kinney was different. Something broke inside him. 23 men died there, and he was the only one who walked out. They say he tried to save them, tried to lead them out when the Sioux attacked. But one by one, they fell. And Nathaniel kept moving, kept surviving when everyone around him died. He has not spoken since, not a single word in 6 years. Will you marry us?" Caleb studied her face for a long moment. "If I do this, if I perform this ceremony, I am taking a position. Judge Wade will not be pleased. Silas Hanford will be less pleased still. Are you prepared for what that might mean? Reverend Stone, I have nothing to lose and 3 days to find the truth. Yes, I am prepared. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well, I will need a witness. Ezra Coleman would serve if he is willing. Mr. Cord suggested him as well. Nathaniel would. Ezra is one of the few truly good men in this town. Caleb reached for his coat, a worn leather jacket that had seen better days. I will fetch him. We will meet you at the cage in 30 minutes. Deputy Ezra Coleman was a tall, broad-shouldered black man with kind eyes and a quiet dignity that reminded Anna of her mother's uncle, the only family member who had shown her genuine kindness after her father died. He stood beside the cage holding a lantern that cast warm light across the iron bars, his expression grave but not unkind. Miss Fletcher, Reverend Stone has explained your request. I want you to know that I will bear witness to this marriage, but I must also ask, are you certain this is what you want? Anna looked at Nathaniel, who sat inside the cage watching her with those calm, assessing eyes. In the lamplight she could see his face more clearly, see the exhaustion written there, the lines that spoke of sleepless nights and days spent staring at the gallows. But she could also see something else, a flicker of something that might have been hope quickly suppressed, but there nonetheless. I am certain, Deputy Coleman. Then we should begin. Caleb Stone opened his worn Bible, the pages soft as cloth from years of handling. The leather cover was cracked, the gold lettering faded. This is irregular to say the least, but then God's grace has always worked in irregular ways. Nathaniel, if you can hear me and understand, I need you to stand. Nathaniel rose smoothly, moving to the bars. He was taller than Anna had realized, probably 6 feet, with the lean, corded muscle of a man who lived by physical labor. He reached through the bars again, extending his hand. Anna stepped forward and took it. His hand was trembling. It was so slight she almost missed it, just the faintest tremor in those calloused fingers. But it was there, and in that moment Anna understood. He was terrified. Terrified to hope, terrified to believe this might actually save him, terrified that she would change her mind at the last moment and walk away. 6 years of silence. 2 weeks in a cage, 3 days until death, and now this strange woman offering salvation with one hand while holding a knife behind her back with the other. Of course he was afraid. Anna squeezed his hand gently, trying to communicate without words. I am here. I will not leave. I promise. His trembling stilled. Dearly beloved, Caleb began, his voice carrying across the empty street, we are gathered here in the sight of God and this witness to join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony. It is not a state to be entered into lightly, but reverently, deliberately, and in accordance with the purposes for which it was instituted. The wind picked up, rattling the bars of the cage. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out to the rising moon, its voice lonely and wild. Anna shivered, but not from the cold. Nathaniel Cord, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Nathaniel looked at Anna, really looked at her, his eyes searching her face as if trying to memorize every detail. His lips parted slightly, and for a moment Anna thought he might speak, might break his 6-year silence right here, right now. But instead he squeezed her hand once, firm, certain. Yes. But Anna saw more than that in his eyes. She saw gratitude and disbelief and a desperate, fragile hope that made her throat tight. She saw a man who had given up on living and was now being asked to believe in it again. She saw fear and courage warring in equal measure. And Anna Louise Fletcher, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Anna's voice was clear in the cold air, steady despite the racing of her heart. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Caleb closed the Bible. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Ezra stepped forward, producing a document from his coat. The marriage certificate. You'll both need to sign or make your mark. Anna signed first, her script careful and precise. Anna Louise Fletcher. Then she paused, dipped the pen again, and added, Cord. It looked strange on the paper, that new name, like trying on someone else's dress and finding it almost fits. Ezra passed the paper through the bars to Nathaniel along with the pen. Anna watched as her new husband gripped the pen awkwardly, his hand clearly more accustomed to knives and rifles than writing instruments. But the signature that emerged was surprisingly elegant, Nathaniel Cord, each letter formed with deliberate care. Witnessed this 12th day of October 1883, Ezra said, adding his own signature, Reverend Stone. Caleb signed, then looked at Anna. Mrs. Cord, you now have legal standing as Nathaniel's wife. That means you can petition Judge Wade for access to the evidence, can request to examine the witnesses, can even hire legal counsel if you can afford it. But it also means you have made yourself visible to people who prefer shadows. Be careful. I will, Reverend, thank you. Ezra handed Anna the certificate, then glanced at Nathaniel. I'll file this with the courthouse first thing tomorrow morning. In the meantime, he glanced between them. I can bring you both coffee if you'd like, give you some privacy to talk. Anna almost laughed at the absurdity. Privacy with iron bars between them and half the town watching from darkened windows. But Ezra's kindness was genuine, and she was grateful for it. Coffee would be welcome, Deputy, thank you. After Ezra and Caleb departed, their footsteps fading into the night, Anna pulled her shawl tight and settled onto the ground beside the cage. The dirt was cold and hard, cold enough that she could feel it even through her layers of skirts and petticoats. Nathaniel lowered himself to sit across from her, close enough that they could have touched through the bars if she reached out. For a time, neither of them moved. The night deepened around them, stars emerging in the clear mountain sky like pinpricks in black velvet. Anna could hear music from the saloon down the street, laughter and the bright sound of a piano. Normal life continuing as if a man were not caged in the street waiting to die. As if the world were not balanced on the edge of a knife. I need you to tell me what happened, Anna said quietly. I know you do not speak, but you can write and I can read. Start with Tom Garrett. How did you know him? Nathaniel picked up his stone and began to draw in the dirt. The words came slowly, each letter deliberate. Tom was foreman, mine good man. You knew him well. No, met twice, trading post. But you were found with his body. Yes. Tell me everything, leave nothing out. I need to understand exactly what happened. Nathaniel paused, his hand hovering over the dirt. Then he smoothed it clean and started again. Anna watched as the story emerged in short, careful phrases. Hunting, elk high. Country heard screaming, found Tom. Anna's breath caught. You heard him screaming. Yes, terrible sound, man. Dying. Nathaniel's hand moved faster now, as if the words were fighting to get out. Bear attack mauled bad, chest opened. Dying slow. Anna felt bile rise in her throat. He was still alive when you found him. Yes, begging. Begging for what? Nathaniel's hand hesitated over the dirt. His jaw clenched, and Anna saw something that might have been pain or guilt or both flicker across his face. Then he wrote 3 words that changed everything: end the pain. The truth hit Anna like a physical blow. She had to close her eyes for a moment, had to breathe through the realization. He asked you to kill him. The bear attack was too severe. He was suffering, dying slowly, and he begged you for mercy. Yes. And you granted it. Nathaniel nodded once, then wrote, I did kill him. He asked me to mercy, not murder. Anna opened her eyes, the pieces rearranging in her mind like a puzzle finding its true shape. Not murder. Mercy. A dying man's final request granted by a stranger in the wilderness. His son Benjamin. He saw this. Nathaniel's face shadowed with something that might have been grief or guilt or both. He wrote again. Boy came after, saw me with knife blood everywhere. Tom already dead but looked like murder. So Benjamin saw you with the body and the weapon, but he did not see what came before. He did not hear his father's plea. Yes, screamed. Ran, I let him go. Why did you not tell them? Why did you let them think it was murder? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He stared at the dirt for a long moment, then wrote slowly, Boy 11 lost father already broken. Truth worse would have to testify. Describe father's death. Hear him begging to die. Relive it in court. No, I chose silence. Protect the boy. Anna stared at him, understanding flooding through her like cold water. You stayed silent to protect Benjamin from having to describe his father's death. You let them cage you, convict you, sentence you to hang all to spare an 11-year-old boy from having to stand in court and remember the worst moment of his life. Nathaniel met her eyes and nodded once. You are either the most noble man I have ever met or the most foolish. A ghost of something crossed his face, not quite a smile, but close. He wrote, Both probably more foolish. Despite everything, Anna felt a laugh escape her, surprising herself. It was absurd sitting in the dirt beside a cage on her wedding night, discussing mercy killings and legal strategies with a man who communicated through scratches in the dust. And yet she realized she had not felt this alive in years, had not felt this sense of purpose, this clarity of intention. We need to prove that Tom was attacked by a bear, she said, her mind already working through possibilities. There must have been evidence at the scene, tracks for claw marks on the trees. Did anyone examine the location properly? Sheriff Lyle. Silas's man not thorough wanted simple answer. Of course not. Anna's voice was bitter. And Wallace Pritchard, did he know any of this? Nathaniel shook his head, then wrote, Wallace afraid Silas controls town mine bank. Judge everything. Judge Wade is corrupt. On payroll, everyone knows nobody talks. The implications were staggering. If the judge was controlled by Silas Hanford, then the trial had been a formality, the verdict predetermined. Tom Garrett's death was just a piece in a larger game, and Nathaniel Cord was a convenient scapegoat. But for what? What did Silas gain from framing an innocent man? Why would Silas want Tom dead? Anna asked. What did he know? Nathaniel hesitated, then wrote, Not sure, but Tom found something embezzlement. Maybe Wallace knew too, that's why he ran. Wallace discovered evidence of embezzlement and fled before he could be silenced. Anna's mind raced, connecting threads. And Tom was killed because he was about to expose it, but they needed his death to look like something else. An accident, a murder by a convenient stranger. Anything except what it really was. She looked at Nathaniel. Where would Wallace keep records? Did he have an office, a safe? House edge of town abandoned, now might still have papers. Then that is where I start tomorrow. Anna glanced at the sky. It was past midnight, now technically Thursday. The stars had wheeled further across the sky, cold and distant and beautiful. 48 hours until dawn on Friday. 48 hours to find evidence that will convince a corrupt judge to release an innocent man. She reached through the bars, and Nathaniel met her hand with his. His fingers were cold now, truly cold, but his grip was steady, strong. I made you a promise, Anna said. I intend to keep it. Nathaniel wrote with his free hand, Why do you care? Don't even know me. Anna considered the question. Why did she care? She had known this man for less than 3 hours. He was a stranger, accused of murder, silent for 6 years. By all logic, she should walk away. Take her marriage certificate, use it to gain passage out of this town, somehow leave Nathaniel Cord to his fate. But she thought of her father dying drunk in a gutter because no one cared enough to help him. She thought of her mother wasting away from consumption while the doctors shook their heads and moved on to patients who could pay. She thought of every time in her life when someone could have helped and chose not to, when someone could have cared and chose indifference. Because no one else will, she said finally. Because you deserve more than silence and a noose. Because I spent 7 years watching my aunt's husband look at me like I was meat, and no one did anything, even though they all knew. Because the world is full of people who see wrong things and do nothing, and I am tired of being one of them. She squeezed his hand. And maybe, because when you looked at me tonight, you did not see a desperate woman or a foolish girl. You saw someone offering help and you took it. That takes courage too. They sat like that for a long time, hands linked through iron bars, while the stars wheeled overhead and the gallows waited in silence and the mountain wind whispered promises of snow. Anna woke just after dawn, stiff and cold from sleeping on the hotel room floor beside the window. She had wanted to stay with Nathaniel through the night, but Ezra had gently insisted that she needed rest, and Mrs. Crenshaw had agreed. So she had returned to room 7 around 2 in the morning, pulled a chair to the window, and watched the cage until exhaustion finally claimed her sometime around 4. Now in the gray light of Thursday morning she could see Nathaniel sitting exactly as she had left him. Had he slept at all? Did he dare, knowing that any moment might bring his last sunrise? She watched him for a long moment, this man who was now her husband, and felt something strange twist in her chest. Not quite affection, not yet, but something close. Kinship, perhaps. The recognition of one wounded soul by another. There was a knock at her door. "Mrs. Cord, I've brought breakfast." Mrs. Crenshaw entered, carrying a tray with eggs, biscuits, and coffee. The smell of the food made Anna's stomach growl, reminding her that she had not eaten since the stage stopped for lunch yesterday. The older woman set the tray on the small table, then stood for a moment, hands clasped. "I heard about the wedding. Word travels fast in a small town." "I imagine it does," Anna said carefully. "Some folks are calling you a fool, others are saying worse." Mrs. Crenshaw met her eyes. "But there are a few of us who are saying maybe you are the smartest person in Redemption Ridge, maybe the bravest." Anna felt something loosen in her chest. "Thank you. I knew Tom Garrett. He was a good man, honest, hard-working, loved his boy more than anything." Mrs. Crenshaw moved to the window, looking down at the cage. "But about 2 weeks before he died, he started acting different, nervous, kept looking over his shoulder like he expected someone to jump him. One night he came to the hotel bar, ordered a whiskey, and sat there for an hour just staring into the glass. I asked if he was all right, and he said," she paused, remembering, "some rocks, when you turn them over, you find things that were better left in the dark." "Did he say what he had found?" "No, but 3 days later he was dead." Mrs. Crenshaw's voice hardened. His wife, Margaret, she took it hard, or seemed to. But there was something off about her grief, too controlled, too careful, like she was playing a part in a stage show. And she was quick to point the finger at Nathaniel, quick to demand justice. Before Tom's body was even cold, she was calling for blood. Where is she now? Staying with Silas Hanford at the big house on the hill. He took her and Benjamin in after Tom died, said it was charity helping a widow in her time of need. Mrs. Crenshaw's expression was skeptical. But in this town, charity usually comes with strings, especially Silas's charity. Anna absorbed this, adding it to the growing pattern in her mind. Margaret's too quick accusation, her residence in Silas's house, Tom's nervousness before his death, Wallace's flight, all of it pointed to something larger, something darker than a simple murder. "Mrs. Crenshaw, I need to get into Wallace Pritchard's house. Is there a way to do that without attracting attention?" The older woman smiled, the expression transforming her face into something almost conspiratorial. "Wallace owed me 2 months' rent. I have a key, and if I were to take someone with me to assess what might be sold to cover his debt, well, that would be perfectly reasonable, wouldn't it?" "Perfectly reasonable," Anna agreed. Wallace Pritchard's house sat at the eastern edge of a town, a small clapboard structure with peeling paint and a sagging porch. The windows were dark, the yard overgrown with weeds that had gone to seed. It looked abandoned, forgotten, as if the town had already erased Wallace from its collective memory. Mrs. Crenshaw unlocked the door, and they stepped into the dim interior. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and the smell of old paper. Anna's eyes adjusted slowly to the gloom. The place had been left in a hurry. Clothes scattered across the bed in the single bedroom. Papers strewn on the desk by the window. A cold cup of coffee on the kitchen table, a thin film of mold floating on its surface. Whoever Wallace Pritchard had been, he had fled in terror, taking only what he could carry and leaving everything else behind. Anna moved methodically through the rooms, searching for anything that might connect to Tom Garrett or Silas Hanford. She found bills of sale, mining reports, correspondence about ore shipments. Nothing obviously incriminating. In the bedroom, she found a locked trunk under the bed. The lock was simple, a basic tumbler mechanism. Anna had learned certain skills during her years of navigating her father's creditors, of searching for anything of value before the debt collectors arrived. Within 2 minutes, the trunk was open. Inside were ledgers, dozens of them bound in leather, covering 5 years of mine operations. Anna pulled them out carefully, spreading them on the floor. The numbers were meticulous, tracking ore yields, equipment costs, payroll, everything. Wallace had been a careful record keeper, and the discrepancies were obvious once you knew to look for them. "Mrs. Crenshaw, look at this." Anna pointed to a series of entries from 18 months ago. The numbers were written in careful script, but the pattern was clear. The mine reported extracting 1,200 pounds of silver ore this week, but the amount sold to the Denver refinery was only 800 pounds. Where did the other 400 go? Maybe it was poor quality, had to be discarded. Then it should be noted in the waste column. But there is nothing. Anna flipped through more pages, her heart racing as the pattern became clear. It is the same thing month after month. Hundreds of pounds of silver ore extracted but never recorded in sales. Someone has been skimming from the mine for years. The stolen amount must total. She did quick calculations in her head, adding up the discrepancies. Over $40,000, maybe more. Silas Hanford. Anna looked up to find a young woman standing in the doorway. She was perhaps 19, with red hair the color of autumn leaves and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. She was dressed in a saloon girl's gaudy finery, all silk and lace and inappropriate décolletage, but something about the way she carried herself was wrong. Too controlled, too watchful, like a soldier in costume. Anna's mind flashed back to the previous evening, walking past the saloon on her way to the cage, a flash of red hair in the lamplight, green eyes watching from a second-story window. This same woman, observing as Anna approached Nathaniel. "Who are you?" Anna asked, though she had a feeling she already knew the answer. "Grace Tennyson. I work at the Lucky Strike Saloon." The young woman stepped into the room, her movements too precise, too controlled for someone in her supposed profession. "But that is not all I am. I came to Redemption Ridge 4 months ago, sent by the Pinkerton Agency to investigate reports of embezzlement at the Hanford mine." Mrs. Crenshaw's eyes widened. "You are a Pinkerton?" "I am." Grace's voice was hard, professional. "My brother died in a collapse at the Hanford mine 4 years ago. The official report said equipment failure, but my family never believed it. We pushed for an investigation, and eventually the Pinkerton Agency agreed to send someone. They sent me." She moved to the window, looking out at the town with an expression Anna could not quite read. "I have spent the last 3 years gathering evidence against Silas Hanford. Tom Garrett was helping me. He was the one who gave me access to the mine records, who confirmed the embezzlement. 2 weeks ago he told me he had found something else, something that would bring Silas down for good. He was going to write a letter to the territorial governor, expose everything." "And then he died," Anna said quietly. "And then he was murdered." Grace's voice was hard as iron. "Not by Nathaniel Cord, by Silas Hanford. I just cannot prove it yet. The evidence, it is all circumstantial. The bare attack provides just enough plausibility that no one will question it." Anna stood brushing dust from her skirts. Her mind was racing now, pieces clicking into place. "Then we prove it together. You have evidence of embezzlement. I have proof that Tom's death was not murder, but mercy. What we need now is the connection between the two. We need to prove that Silas orchestrated Tom's death to silence him. Grace nodded slowly, studying Anna with new interest. I saw you last night. Saw you go to the cage. Saw you marry Nathaniel. Everyone in town is talking about it. They think you are either crazy or desperate. I am both, Anna said, but I am also right. Nathaniel did not murder Tom Garrett. He gave him mercy at Tom's own request, and I intend to prove it. Tom kept a personal journal, Grace said. His wife would have it, but she is staying with Silas now, and the house is locked up tight. Then we need to search Silas's office, Anna said. If he ordered Tom's death, there will be some record of it. A letter, a payment, something. Men like Silas are arrogant. They keep trophies. His office is in the bank building, second floor. He keeps it locked, and there is a guard at night. Anna thought for a moment. But during the day, when the bank is open, during the day, he is usually there. And even if he is not, his secretary would see anyone coming up the stairs. Not if she were distracted. Anna turned to Mrs. Crenshaw. How well do you know the bank secretary? Martha. Very well. We play cards every Tuesday night. She owes me money from last week's game. Good. Tomorrow is Friday. The execution is at dawn. Tonight, everyone will be thinking about the hanging about Nathaniel. The town will be distracted. Anna's mind was working through the plan, seeing the pieces fall into place. If Martha could be persuaded to leave her post for a few minutes, perhaps, to deliver an urgent message to Reverend Stone about the burial arrangements, Mrs. Crenshaw smiled slowly. I think that could be arranged. Anna looked at Grace. Can you get me a key to Silas's office? The young woman reached into her bodice and produced a small brass key. I lifted this from Silas's coat 2 weeks ago and had a copy made. I have been waiting for the right moment to use it, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to help me. Tonight is the right moment. Anna took the key, feeling its weight in her palm, cold metal warm with Grace's body heat. After dark, when the bank closes, we search the office, find what we need, and get out before anyone knows we were there. And if we are caught, Grace asked. Anna met her eyes. Then we make sure we are not caught. Anna spent the afternoon with Nathaniel, sitting beside the cage while the town moved around them like water flowing around a stone. People stared, some with curiosity, others with open hostility. A few women crossed the street to avoid passing too close, gathering their skirts, as if the very proximity to the cage might contaminate them. But Ezra brought them lunch, simple fare of bread and cheese and apples, and Reverend Stone stopped by to check on them, and gradually Anna began to identify the fault lines in Redemption Ridge. There were those loyal to Silas Hanford, Sheriff Lyle, a thick-necked man with small, mean eyes, Judge Wade, who moved through town with the air of someone who owned it, the bank employees who spoke in hushed tones and averted their gazes. Most of the mine supervisors who dressed better than miners should be able to afford. And there were those who kept their heads down and their doubts to themselves. Crenshaw, Ezra, Caleb Stone, a handful of miners who had known Tom Garrett and respected him. And then there was Margaret Garrett. She appeared just before sunset, walking down Main Street with her son Benjamin at her side. She was a handsome woman in her mid-40s, tall and well-proportioned, dressed in black mourning clothes that looked expensive, too expensive for a foreman's widow, even a foreman's widow living on Silas Hanford's charity. The fabric was fine wool, probably imported from the East. The cut was fashionable, not the homespun practicality most women in Redemption Ridge wore. Benjamin was a slight boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's sharp features, his face set in careful blankness. He walked beside her with his eyes downcast, hands clenched into fists at his sides. Anna watched him approach and saw something in the set of his shoulders that she recognized. Shame, guilt, the posture of someone carrying a weight too heavy for their years. Margaret stopped 10 feet from the cage and stared at Nathaniel. Her expression was unreadable, carved from ice. Mrs. Garrett. Anna stood smoothing her skirts. I am Anna Cord. I wonder if I might speak with you about your husband. My husband is dead, killed by that animal in the cage. Margaret's voice was cold, clipped, each word falling like a stone. "What is there to speak about? I am trying to understand what happened in the high country. I believe there may be more to the story than what was presented at trial. The story is simple. That man murdered Tom. My son witnessed it. Justice will be served Friday morning." Margaret's hand tightened on Benjamin's shoulder, her fingers digging into the fabric of his coat hard enough that the boy flinched. "Come, Benjamin, we should not be here." But the boy was staring at Nathaniel with an expression that was not quite hatred. There was something else there, something that looked almost like confusion, or perhaps recognition. Or perhaps Anna thought the desperate need to confess something that was eating him alive from the inside. "Benjamin," Anna said gently, "you found your father in the high country. Can you tell me what you saw?" "Do not speak to my son." Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. "You have no right." "I have every right. I am trying to find the truth. The truth is that my husband is dead and his killer sits in that cage." Margaret leaned forward, her eyes blazing with what might have been fury or might have been fear. "You married him, a condemned murderer. What kind of woman does that? The kind who believes in justice." Anna held her ground. "Your husband was a good man, Mrs. Garrett. Everyone says so. Honest, hard-working, devoted to his family. Do you not want to know exactly what happened to him? Do you not want the full truth?" For just a moment, something flickered in Margaret's eyes. Uncertainty. Guilt. Then it was gone, locked behind a wall of cold fury. "Stay away from my son. Stay away from my husband's memory. And when that man hangs on Friday, I will be there to watch." She pulled Benjamin away, marching back toward the big house on the hill. Anna watched them go, her mind working. Margaret's anger had felt performative too, practiced, like someone playing a role they had rehearsed. And Benjamin had not said a word, had not even looked at his mother. He had stared at Nathaniel the entire time, his face haunted his eyes, begging for something Anna could not quite name. "She is protecting something," Anna said quietly, "or someone." Nathaniel wrote in the dirt, "Scared not angry, scared boy, knows more, wants to tell, can't." Night fell early in the high country shadows, spilling down from the mountains like ink spreading across paper. With it came a cold wind that promised the first snow of the season. Anna returned to the hotel to change into darker clothes, clothes that would not show dirt or draw attention. Mrs. Crenshaw met her in the lobby with a dark cloak and a pair of men's boots. "These belong to my late husband. They should fit well enough. And take this." She pressed a small derringer into Anna's hand. The metal was cold, the weight somehow both insignificant and terrifying. "I do not like guns, but I like the idea of you being defenseless even less." Anna accepted the weapon, checking the chamber with movements her father's gambling associates had taught her back when she was 16, and they still thought she might be useful. 2 shots. Better than nothing, though, not by much. "Thank you." Grace appeared at the door, dressed in a simple, dark dress, her red hair hidden under a scarf. In different clothes, she looked younger, more vulnerable, less like a saloon girl, and more like what she really was, a young woman trying to avenge her brother's death. "The bank closes in 30 minutes, Grace said. "Martha will be leaving through the back door at 7:30. That gives us a 15-minute window before the night guard makes his rounds. Then we had better not waste it." Anna tucked the derringer into her pocket and pulled the cloak around her shoulders. The fabric smelled of mothballs and old tobacco. "Mrs. Crenshaw, if anyone asked, you have been in your room all evening with a headache. I brought you tea at 7. You did not want to be disturbed." Mrs. Crenshaw's face was set with determination. "I will swear to it on a stack of Bibles if necessary." The bank building was dark, except for a single lamp in the front window, casting a weak pool of yellow light onto the street. Anna and Grace moved through the alley behind Main Street, keeping to the shadows. The night air smelled of wood smoke and coming snow, and something else. Fear, perhaps, or maybe just Anna's imagination. The back door was locked, but Grace produced a set of picks and went to work. Anna watched the street, her heart pounding so hard she was sure someone would hear it. The derringer in her pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The lock clicked open. Inside, the bank smelled of ink and paper and old money, the scent of power and secrets. They climbed the stairs to the second floor, moving carefully to avoid creaking boards. Every sound seemed magnified in the darkness. Anna's breathing, the rustle of Grace's skirts, the distant sound of piano music from the saloon. Silas Hanford's office was at the end of the hall, a heavy oak door with his name painted in gold letters, S. Hanford, Proprietor. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The office was opulent in a way that seemed obscene in a frontier town. Thick carpets from the Orient, their patterns intricate and expensive. Leather chairs that probably cost more than most miners made in a year. A massive mahogany desk that dominated the room. On the walls hung paintings of landscapes and portraits of men in expensive suits, their faces stern and satisfied. Everything designed to project power and permanence, to say, "I am untouchable." "You take the desk," Grace whispered. "I will search the file cabinets." Anna moved to the desk, trying each drawer. The top ones were unlocked, containing routine correspondence and business records, bills of lading, shipping manifests, nothing obviously incriminating, but the bottom drawer was locked. She pulled out a hairpin and went to work on the mechanism, her hands surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. Her father's gambling associates had taught her many useful skills, usually without meaning to. How to pick a lock. How to read marked cards. How to spot a lie. The lock clicked open. Inside the drawer was a leather folder containing perhaps a dozen letters. Anna pulled them out carefully, angling them toward the moonlight coming through the window. The paper was fine quality, the ink expensive. The first was dated 3 weeks ago, written in a woman's elegant hand. "My dearest Silas, Tom has become suspicious. He found the discrepancies in the ore weights and has been asking questions. I tried to dissuade him, but he is stubborn. You know how he gets when he thinks he is right about something. We may need to take more direct action. I will do as we discussed and send him to check the high country claims. The area near Devil's Canyon is known for bear activity. The old trappers say there is a sow with cubs denning up there. Perhaps nature will solve our problem for us. I know this is terrible. I know what we are doing. But we have come too far to turn back now, and Benjamin will be provided for. That is what matters. Yours always, M." Anna's hands trembled as she read it again, the implications sinking in like poison. M. Margaret. Tom's wife had been complicit in his death. She had sent him into bear country knowing what would happen, knowing he would likely die. The second letter was Silas's reply. "My dear Margaret, your solution is elegant. See that he goes alone and that he is properly equipped to attract the attention of the local wildlife. A poorly secured pack perhaps, or fresh meat left exposed. The scent will draw predators. We cannot leave this to chance. Once he is gone, we can proceed with the mine expansion without interference. The new shaft will be profitable beyond measure, and your share will be substantial as promised. You and Benjamin will want for nothing. He can have the education you always wanted for him. Harvard if you wish it. Make it appear natural. Let the mountain take care of our difficulty. No one will question a bear attack. Such things happen in the high country. With affection, S. H. Anna felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness but from rage. Margaret had murdered her own husband for money, had sent him to his death as coldly as if she had pulled a trigger. "Grace," Anna's voice was barely a whisper, "I found it. Evidence that Margaret and Silas conspired to have Tom killed. They sent him into the mountains deliberately knowing he would be attacked." Grace crossed to the desk, reading over Anna's shoulder. Her face went white, then red with fury. "This is it. This proves premeditated murder. We can take this to the territorial marshal bypass Judge Wade entirely." There is more. Anna shuffled through the remaining letters. One was from Tom himself, dated 2 days before his death. The handwriting was shaky, as if written in haste or fear, "Mr. Wallace Pritchard, I am writing to you in confidence because I believe my life may be in danger. I have discovered evidence of systematic embezzlement at the Hanford mine conducted by Silas himself with the cooperation of several supervisors. The stolen silver totals over $40,000 across 5 years. I have compiled proof which I keep hidden in a secure location. Should anything happen to me, I trust you will ensure this information reaches the proper authorities. My wife does not know of this, and I fear her reaction should she discover it. She has become close with Silas in recent months, and I suspect their friendship extends beyond what is proper. I leave for the high country tomorrow to inspect the claims near Devil's Canyon. Margaret insists I go, though I have a bad feeling about it. She says it is important that Silas needs the report urgently. But something feels wrong. If I do not return, please look after Benjamin. He is a good boy and deserves better than the world we have made. Tell him his father loved him. Yours in faith, Thomas Garrett. Anna felt tears spill over, now hot against her cold cheeks. Tom had known. He had known he was walking into a trap, but he had gone anyway. Perhaps hoping he was wrong. Perhaps not knowing what else to do. Perhaps thinking that if he refused, it would confirm his suspicions and force Silas's hand sooner. "We need to find where he hid the evidence," Grace said, her voice tight with emotion. "If we have both the letters and Tom's proof of embezzlement, we can bury Silas." Anna was about to respond when she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Multiple people. Someone was coming. "Hide," Grace hissed. They dove for the space behind a large filing cabinet just as the door opened. Lamplight flooded the room bright enough to make Anna squint. She pressed herself against the wall, feeling Grace do the same beside her. The space was tight, barely enough room for both of them. Anna could feel Grace's heart pounding, could smell her fear sweat mixing with cheap perfume. Silas Hanford entered, followed by 2 men Anna did not recognize. One was older, in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit that marked him as someone important, probably an investor or business partner. The other was younger, nervous-looking, with the soft hands of someone who had never done manual labor. "Gentlemen, let me show you the expansion plans." Silas's voice was smooth, confident, the voice of a man who had never doubted his own power. He moved to the desk, spreading out a map. "With Tom Garrett gone, we can proceed without interference. The high country claims will yield substantially more silver than the current operations." Anna's blood ran cold. He was talking about Tom's death as if it were a simple business matter, an obstacle removed, a problem solved. "And the territorial inspector?" the older man asked. "I heard there were concerns about safety violations." "Taken care of. Judge Wade has ensured that any complaints are dismissed without investigation." Silas chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding together. "And with Garrett dead and that mountain man taking the blame, there is no one left to raise questions. It worked out rather perfectly, actually.